Hi guys, we're here. You'll notice that there's 3 of us instead of the usual 2. We have Erin Flynn here with us, and if you haven't joined us before, then welcome. My name is Lindsay, and this is my husband Jess over here. We are on answering questions that are sent in by you guys. Usually every week, Thursday at noon. You are more than welcome to send in your questions if you have a question for us. Today we have something just a little bit different because we've got Erin here with us. We've got something just a little bit different, and we're going to be talking about equine nutrition, and we're also going to let you in on kind of an exciting announcement about the next 90 days. So as you're following along, if you're watching live, you can ask your questions in the comments here and we'll try to get to them. If you're watching the replay, you can also leave your comments and we will swing back and try to get to those as well. So like I said, this is Erin Flynn. Erin is a certified nutritionist from the University of Guelph and a horse person.
Yes.
Yeah. How many horses do you have right now?
2 at the moment.
2
Yes.
at the moment, and Erin has been here before for some lessons, and she starts some colts and sorts and pens.
Yeah.
Right?
All the things.
Does it all.
All the things.
You grew up riding English horses, right?
Started English. Oh, no, sorry. Started Western. Went
Western.
to English, and then back to the Western world. So.
Right. So we're going to talk just a little bit about nutrition today, and before we do that, so we have, I think it's kind of interesting, you know, as we were just chatting before we came on live, that you know, Erin is a certified nutritionist from University of Guelph. I am a graduate of Meredith Manor International Equestrian Center, so we both have some formal education about nutrition and horses. Jesse has so much hands-on, years and years of experience with handling all kinds of different horses and being responsible for their nutritional needs and supporting them through competition. And you know, we all kind of come down to the same idea on nutrition and feeding as close to nature as possible. Do you want to just speak to what your thoughts are on feeding when people are coming to you and asking questions about what should I feed my horse, or my horse is on this and that, you know, what should I be doing? Because you get that a lot.
We get a lot with the training horses. Nothing I ever use is any different than guys I used to work for. It's been tried and true so many times. They all come back to feed good hay. Don't cheap out on hay. You can sure feed a lot less grain if you feed good hay. I don't believe in a lot of the, you know, when somebody comes in and they have 16 different supplements and 20 different tubs of this and that, usually it's pretty useless. But good hay, quality feed is the biggest thing that it always comes down to. We feed different feeds. My broodmares out back don't get fed the same type of hays and grains that my show horses and the riding horses do, but it still has to be you know, good quality. And in southwestern Ontario, we're so lucky. We have everything available to us around here, from the grains to the hays. You know, some of our friends down south don't have that luxury. If we want to go find it, we just look around here. So we're able to experiment with those kinds of things, you know, as far as what we can feed them. And it still comes back to just good hay. And then, you know, then we find out what we need to supplement on top of that.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing that, I mean, I don't have as much in-class experience as you do, or knowledge, I guess, as you do, Erin, about equine nutrition. And everything that I go back to and everything that I learned is to feed as close to nature as possible, and that it's not just what you're feeding, like nutritionally, what the horse is actually getting, this percentage of protein or this amount of fat or this amount of fiber. It's also how they're consuming it. How the body is consuming it is super, super important. Do you have some tips or things to share about how horses are consuming that you can kind of share with everybody here?
Yeah, definitely. And kind of going on Jesse's point about the quality hay, obviously it's said that your horse's diet should be made up of 90% forage, quality forage, not just any forage. But in terms of how we feed, obviously the most important thing is consistent grazing, and whether that's in the pasture or on hay or cubes. Obviously horses' stomachs are very small, so they need to eat more frequently and in smaller amounts. So if they can graze more often, that's definitely a benefit for them. Also, them being able to graze on the ground, again, whether that's with the pasture or feeding your hay lower cubes in a ground feeder or some sort of bin, just to get that jaw rotation will help with that. And then probably one of the biggest things is the saliva production that forage does create, which buffers any sort of gastric acid in the stomach and kind of prevents any stomach issues from happening. So
yeah, so it's different than the way that we are meant to be eating, right? Where we're meant to be, or I guess maybe this is being challenged now too, but we're kind of meant to be eating 3 meals a day and sitting down and waiting to be active for however long after, right? Remember growing up as a kid, like you can't go swimming after you've eaten, you have to wait, or it's definitely different for horses than it is for people, and how they consume it is so important.
Yeah, well, especially too, because I know horses are stalled nowadays quite frequently, and really horses digest the best when they're moving. So anytime you can feed a horse and let them roam and that, they're going to definitely digest it a lot better and get the nutrients out of what they're eating better as well.
Right. So for us, we have some horses that are outside all the time, some horses that are turned out, and we have some horses that are in stalls almost all the time, other than when they're getting trained on, right? So can you share just some of the things that we do for the horses that are stalled? Because I guess we're getting, right now, it's April, we're getting into the time of year where people are going to start to be able to turn their horses out a lot more if they've had them in, especially keeping them off the pastures and stuff to let them grow up. But for a lot of us, especially in Ontario, it's a reality that we have to have them stalled and we have to be feeding them in stalls a lot of the time. So can you just share some of the things that we do around here to support the horses nutritionally, I guess?
I think the biggest thing for us that we feed 24 hours a day. And even the training horses, we don't ever limit their amount of hay. We don't ever limit what they can get into their belly, for multiple reasons. Nothing kills a horse trainer's customer base quicker than a horse going home skinny. And for health reasons, the more you keep stuff moving through there, they're just healthier. Colics are way less. It just keeps life going around so much better. They have to be fit to do the job we want them to do. The reiners and the cow horses and the ranch riding is a physically hard job. They have to move. They have to be able to perform. And we have to be able to train them today and be able to train them tomorrow. If I come out tomorrow and that horse is dead-footed and just, lethargic, I don't get to go train that horse. So for me, it's keep them eating good all day long. When I grain, for me, graining is more about basically getting salt into them, getting some minerals if they need it, supplements if people want those. But to me, it's all about hay. And one thing I learned very on is I learned from guys who did this as a business, not Farmer Ed down the road who told me his hay was good. Testing hay is a huge thing we used to do. We don't as much anymore because we know where it's coming from more. Just because it looks good and Farmer Ed told you it was good, it isn't. Don't believe him.
Farmer Ed.
Well, whoever your Farmer Ed is.
Farmer Ed under the bus right now.
Yeah.
And there's always somebody saying, well, it looks good because it's this color or whatever. And I've tested some that look so fancy, and it was garbage. And that really scared me years ago. And now with the way things are farmed, things are taken off the ground so much that we need to know what's going into those horses. But for me, even before we had our corner feeders that we use so much, I used to always feed hay 4 or 5 times a day. We just give them a flake all day long. Partially from my sanity, our 2 and 3 year old reining horses are active brained in their stalls. They will fiddle around and just, do stupid things in their stalls. Mentally, I wanted to keep them occupied. And then I also didn't want their gut sitting completely empty for, 12, 13 hours a day, and then only being expected to eat at certain times of the day. So the biggest one for me was 24 hours a day of hay being, they're not going to eat 24 hours a day, but they have that option of picking through it a little bit at a time was always huge to me when I saw the difference in like I said, the people that I worked for that did that for a living on large number of horses, how much better their horses looked feeding the same amount of hay but divvying it up through the day.
And how much less hay gets wasted, right? Because they're not
I'm cheap and I hate throwing it out in the
Well, I wasn't going to say that. I was just going to say there's less to clean out of the stalls when they're eating it. When it goes in and they're eating it.
Well, and I never minded paying the hay bill if it was good hay, but I hated throwing it out in the manure pile.
Okay, so we have the feeders, which I know some of you are familiar with. We have the Pro Panel corner feeders, which are available on our website if you want to check those out. But they're basically a molded plastic. There's a big section in the middle for hay, and we just fill that up with hay. And then there's 2 sections on the side, and one side is for grain, and the other side is for hay cubes. And hay cubes are actually kind of the reason why we're here and have this conversation. And before we get too far into that, can you kind of talk about why we would feed hay cubes? Because we're kind of talking about feeding as close to nature as possible, and good hay being, the foundation of basically, feeding our horses. And now we're talking about hay cubes, which is kind of taking it a step further from how nature intended. So can you talk about why people feed hay cubes, what the pros and cons are, just a little bit, and then tell us about your product, about the MAAAX. So Erin's also, what's your position with MAAAX Long Fiber?
Business developer for MAAAX, sales consultant.
Yeah. She does it all.
Things,
She's the most important person.
Yeah,
just leave it at that.
That's in the title. Most important person. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely, cubes are a different source of forage. The benefits that kind of cubes in general have over hay, probably the number one being the consistent quality. Typically with hay, unless you have, a supplier that you use regularly, and if you're not testing, then it might be hard to know what you're getting each time you get a load of hay. So
a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
A lot of people, is this good hay? I don't know how to tell. Or you get a bale and you open it up and half of it's no good.
Yeah. And again, like we were saying, just because it looks pretty and good doesn't mean that it is. So
and even from a field point of view, from a farmer's point of view, most hay is planted as a secondary crop.
Yeah.
You might have the backfield being full of alfalfa and really well fertilized. The difference in a field might change too.
Yes.
So there's where a huge difference comes in.
Definitely.
On something non-tested.
Yeah, so typically with cube manufacturers, most of them are going to have kind of contract growers. So you're going to have similarities through every year and through every crop. So that's definitely going to be benefit for how you're feeding each year. So consistency with most things is key. And then just the nutrient profile. So obviously cube manufacturers aren't going to, produce crap hay. It's going to be fairly high quality in your nutrients and vitamins, digestible energy, fiber, all those things. So definitely the most important thing and one of the biggest benefits of cubes is consistent nutrition and quality.
For us, it's also how easy they are to pack to go to a horse show.
Yeah, so that's the next one. So convenience, convenience, convenience.
Yeah.
So cubes are so much easier to handle, to store, to
Take up less
maneuver,
space. Yeah.
take up less space. And like you said, going to shows, I mean, obviously there's only so much room in the trailer, so the smaller bags of cubes are going to be definitely easier to haul around. And even in like a kind of a safety standpoint too, I mean, with hay being stored, if you have hay lofts, I mean, obviously you run the risk of potential fire. With obviously the cubes, there's no risk of that. So there's a lot of benefits into the convenience of the cubes. And then even from there, obviously not all hay is dusty, but a lot of it, especially if it sits long in your loft, does tend to get dusty. So with the cubes, they're virtually dust-free. So any horse that maybe already has, breathing issues, it's going to minimize them and obviously not make them any worse. And obviously if you feed the, forage cubes, then you're going to not run the risk at all of like getting any breathing issues. So that's really important, especially for the performance horses and the horses that are in a lot of work.
And then there's kind of the obvious, right, is that it's already chopped. So for older horses or horses that have dental issues, being able to give them something that's like, it's almost partially digested.
Yes, exactly.
Right? It can be a way to keep them getting that nutritional content that they need, that they may not be able to get enough of just from eating hay.
Definitely, yes. The cubes are, especially the MAAAX cubes, are great for horses, older horses with poor teeth quality. They're a lot easier. Like I said, they're basically partly digested, so they're already halfway there. So that's definitely a benefit for cubes. And then the last, kind of going to your point about not wanting to waste hay and the hay you pay for, virtually waste-free. So unless you have your corner feeders that Lindsay was describing, if you feed on the ground, most times your horse is probably going to trample in them, lay in it, pee in it. With cubes, most of them, in almost all cases, are consumed completely, which obviously nutritional wise is good too. You want your horse to get as much of the good nutrition from hay as possible, but if they're wasting it, then they're going to be lacking.
Yeah. So then, can you tell us the difference between the MAAAX cubes, the MAAAX long fiber, and a traditional cube?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few major points that kind of
right here.
that make MAAAX cubes different from your typical cubes. Obviously, the first one is you're going to see the size. So when we talk about long fiber, if you look at the research, it's said that the fiber length of forage to be considered long fiber is 2.5 centimeters. Typically, once you break open the MAAAX cube, it'll vary, but you can get up to almost 4.5, or sometimes not longer, centimeters of the forage particles, so the pieces that are cut up.
You can see them right in there.
And how we get that, and how we get the size, is we use a 3-inch grinder cut when we grind our cubes. Typically, most other manufacturers would use a maximum of 2-inch, so that's how we kind of get our long fiber as opposed to some of the other, 1.25 cubes, other 7/8 cubes. So very, very important is the fiber length. And then to tie into that, the fiber length, obviously, and the size is going to allow for better saliva production, which we kind of spoke on a bit earlier. So saliva, the main thing it does, well, one, it provides electrolytes for the horse. It does provide some minerals as well in the saliva, but the main thing is that it's going to buffer any gastric acid in the gut. Gastric acid starts to build up almost immediately once the feed is consumed. It doesn't matter what type of feed it is. So when feeding, you want to make sure you feed something that's going to produce the most saliva to buffer that acid. So with the cubes being the size that they are and the fiber length that they are going to create much more saliva than your typical 1.25 or 7/8 cube. So that's a huge benefits for a horse, especially those that are in high stress situations. It's going to just produce enough saliva to buffer that acid, so we reduce the risk of ulcers and all those awful things. So those are the two main benefits. The other one I would say, because our MAAAX cubes tend to be 60-40 split of alfalfa to Timothy, you're getting a little bit more digestible energy in these cubes, which is great, again, for all horses, but specifically performance horses, because I know a lot of people, I think, are afraid to feed more hay, and they kind of want to resort to feeding more grain, whereas a lot of them can do just as good on more hay instead of more grain. And then what else?
They're made in Ontario.
Yes, that is very important. Yes.
Like that.
Yeah, the hay is all from Ontario. Each batch we get of hay is all traceable. So
Yeah,
if
that's
there's
really
an
cool.
issue with a bag of cubes, we can go back to the lot we got it from, go back to the field, and make sure that it's we're not going to have the same problems with the next load. So that's very important.
That's really neat. And then obviously, because it's like chopped up into little pieces, it has to be bound some way so that it all stays together. And I know most feed companies will use lime to bind, right? Which is probably not ideal. What are these ones used with again?
So these are bound with bentonite. So it's called a bentonite clay. Don't let the clay scare you. It does not, clump up in their stomach into clay. But what's kind of cool about bentonite is it's a natural toxin binder. A lot of people actually use it as kind of a natural wormer. So it's kind of neat that way, instead of using the lime. I don't think there's any studies that really show that lime's super bad, but just, it's probably not something that we want to give them if we don't have to. So
Yeah. Okay, so I showed you the fibers just a little bit there, but the other thing that I wanted to show you was just how easily these break apart. Because if you're used to I'm gonna just crumble it all right in front of us, but if you're used to a traditional cube, they're really hard to break apart. So we're talking about, it being really, really easy to break apart. I can just do it here with my fingers here, and if you remember the way that the horse is designed, it's not the same as human teeth, where we're actually meant to be biting into flesh and pulling it apart, right? We have really sharp teeth. The horse has flat teeth, so they're not really meant to be biting something really hard. And that was, for me, that was one of the major appeals to this product. Was it's easy. It's almost like what they would eat once they've partially chewed it, right? Small pieces, so a lot of chew time, a longer amount of time spent chewing, easier to break apart, so they're not stressing their jaw, and then all of the benefits of that longer chop length, right, which is the increased chew time, more saliva production, so then we're coating the stomach and preventing ulcers and colics.
we forgot to mention the no soaking as well. Almost forgot about that.
The what?
The no soaking.
Okay.
Yeah. So another benefit to these, are because of the size and the amount of chewing time that they have, is typically these cubes do not have to be soaked.
Yeah.
The only time you recommend soaking is if your horse is already prone to bloat their food, so they're already kind of prone to choke. So, we recommend it then, or if your horse has super, super poor teeth or none at all, then that might be a possibility to soak. But soaking is not bad. However, if you do soak, you tend to lose the saliva production, because they're basically already crumbled and the horse doesn't have to chew as much, so you're going to reduce the chew time as well. So not having to soak is obviously convenient as well. And then if you do soak and you let them soak a long period of time, you could also run the risk of the product going rancid and
we don't want
your
that.
horse. So we don't want to do that. No. So they're great. They don't have to be soaked in many cases, and it's almost beneficial not to soak them.
So the company's been around for how long?
So the company itself has been around for a few decades in the forage business. They started their first cubing plant in 2009. That was kind of when they wanted to kind of bridge the gap between like long fiber forage and a forage cube. And then in 2014, MAAAX was actually born. So company's been around forever.
Right in Ontario.
Right in Ontario, yep, Ontario-based company.
And you were saying before that they have been in agriculture for decades.
Generations, yeah.
Generations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. And who else is using these? Like, these are not a new product, right? They've been around for years. Who else is using these?
Yeah, so I mean, there's plenty of large farms and stables across Ontario that believe in this product, use this product. One major one, obviously, would be the Millbrook Farms. They do use it exclusively. Captain Canada, yes. So he he uses them exclusively, and yeah, a lot of different people from the English world to the Western world, riding, jumping, all kinds of.
Yeah, we have some trainer friends that are using them as well. So we are super excited to announce the announcement that we've been kind of teasing you with, is that we're super excited to be partnering with Erin and with MAAAX, and we are going to be using these cubes exclusively. So we have used them in the past. We know that our horses like them. We know that they do well on them. We just started on Friday. Using these cubes exclusively for all of the horses on the farm. So, you know, everything from very young horses to, I have a couple of old retirees that are out there. And we're just really excited to share that with you and offer the product for sale on our shop. If you're interested in buying the cubes and trying them out, then you can do that through any of the dealers. What's the website that they can find the dealers?
The MAAAXequine.ca, and it's with 3 A's. MAAAX is with 3 A's.
MAAAX with 3 A's. And we don't know why.
I'll try to find
why.
out.
We gotta find out why, where the 3 A's came from. It's kind of cool though, AAA,
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all it was.
Maybe.
Yeah, so if you guys want to try these, you can find them at the MAAAX website. You can also buy them through us, and we are going to be providing some updates for you over the next 90 days to see how all the horses are doing and all of the functionality from our perspective. So, you know, taking them to the horse show, and I saw that you've even been giving some of the horses outside and some tubs outside some of the cubes. We're just going to give you all the updates and let you know how they're working out, how the horses are doing. I'm really excited about it because of, like we talked about at the beginning, feeding us close to nature. I feel like this is, this is pretty dang close to nature. You know, it's easy to pull apart. You can actually see all the different pieces. You know, and that chew time, the more that I learn about equine nutrition, I know there's some, there's maybe more information on the cow side, the dairy farm, and, you know, the production of milk kind of leads to more studies on the production of cows and keeping them. And there's a lot more information about chop length and chew factor and stuff for cows than there is for horses available. But I'm really excited to see how all of the horses do with that longer chew factor and the chop length, and you know, knowing that it's a product that's made in Ontario, all of the bags are traceable, just really appealing to me. And I know that some of our clients that we've spoken to already are pretty excited to be giving them to their horses with breathing conditions. We have a couple of people in the barn that their horses have some breathing conditions, and so it's a nice way to offer a dust-free option that still has tons of fiber, right? Rather than going to a grain.
I think one thing I forgot to talk about too is feeding hay cubes is easy to tell weight.
Yes.
Like a regular bale. And when I used to shoe, I'd see this all the time. You go to somebody's place and they would have a skinny horse that was never skinny, and they'd say, well, I'm still giving him 5 flakes of hay a day.
Yeah.
But the flakes weighed half as much as another bale, or they're in the mercy of somebody else feeding their horse. As where when you have something that's a consistent weight, you know what they're getting, and you know how much they're eating too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the bags actually have the nutritional breakdown on them. So where we're talking about go take your hay and have it tested. Well, the hay cubes actually have that information for you right on the bag. So if getting your hay tested is something that you can't do, is really hard for you to do, then this will give you a way to provide some consistency in the nutrition.
Because we will actually test the hay and test the cubes once they're
amazing
done
That's
as well.
cool.
So we have all the important information.
I think the nutritional value and the weight are the two biggest things that people struggle with. We're so mindset of how many flakes does my horse eat, instead of what and how much does that flake weigh. I mean, we buy our hay by the pound, and so many people always ask me, what does a bale weigh? Well, I have some bales.
So what does the bale cost?
If they bring them in, and they're 750-pound square bales compared to 1,200-pound square bales, I buy it by the pound. I don't even care what it is. Volume-wise, I want pound-wise. Have that consistent, if you go away and somebody else is feeding your horses, have a consistent product where you know what they're going to eat, what the horse is going to eat. And if they're off of it for some reason, you would know it, you would know what the problem is, and you could make an educated decision of what to do from there.
Awesome point.
Okay, so did we have any questions that we needed to address quickly? Kristen's asking if we're replacing all regular forage with the cubes.
That's kind of up to the horse and what the horse needs. MAAAX can be a full hay replacement if you need, or it can be partial. But basically, if you're replacing cubes with hay, it's on a pound-to-pound basis. But that ultimately depends on the quality of hay you're feeding. If you're feeding a lower quality hay than the MAAAX cubes, you can probably get away with feeding less MAAAX cubes because they're going to be higher in quality in nutrients. So it's gonna vary depending on the horse and what you're doing with the horse and kind of what goal you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and we're still going to continue to feed hay and also feed cubes. So for us, it's not replacing the hay entirely; it's to supplement the hay, and it's for convenience. For a lot of times, it's convenience at the horse shows. It's a way to help get a lot of fiber, and it's a way to keep them occupied. They spend so much time chewing on those cubes that they seem to do really well on cubes, especially at the shows. And cost-wise, Lisa's asking cost-wise, what's the cost difference of feeding all hay versus cubes? It depends on what you're paying. It depends on what you're paying for hay, what you're paying to have the hay delivered, to have it stacked up in your barn. It depends on how much is getting wasted, right? It depends on a lot of things. I think generally the cubes are a bit more expensive than hay, for at least for us, for what we're paying for hay right now. The cubes are a bit more expensive than the hay. These bags are $19.99 a bag. It's a 20, right? 20?
20 kg, yeah.
20 kilogram bag. So to compare or you can jump in here if you have a different thought, but they're a bit more expensive. The cubes are a bit more expensive than regular hay, depending on what you're paying for the hay. The MAAAX cubes are a little bit more expensive than a traditional cube, but you're getting more immediate nutrition and you're getting the longer chew length. So that's why, that's the interesting thing, right? Is to see how the horses handle that increased chew time and the more immediate nutrition. Are we able to actually feed the same amount or less of the MAAAX than we do the other hay cubes that we're using?
And you make a good point with you got to remember the waste factor, because you get waste from just moving the bales from the loft or wherever you're storing it down to the barn, then from the barn to the stall, and then whatever the horse weighs. So it's really hard to tell in the big picture, but there's a lot of factors to take in consideration.
I can remember though, about 12 years ago, we had no hay here. It was bad. And I was feeding hay cubes, free choice hay cubes, and it did not work out pound for pound because the horses were maintaining a level of quality because they weren't wasting anything. And my feed bill did not go up when I switched over. And that year we were forced to switch over because we just had no hay. Like, we had a huge drought that year. And I remember people were bringing hay over from Western Canada. But when we switched over, my hay bill did not go up because they were eating, I always said, a pure product. And then they kept a better top. For me, it's the top line that, our reiners, we need them fit and we want them to have some bulk on them. And they kept that same bloom, they kept that same fitness level. What would normally take me X amount of pounds per day of hay, it was less pounds per day of hay cubes. So the ratio was just a little different. The hay cubes, they ate it all. You didn't waste anything. You knew what they were getting, and it actually worked out quite well. Some horses just do, they're just messy. They're just wasteful, and yeah.
Lucky you.
So giving them hay cubes wasn't. I thought it was going to be horrible, and it shocked me when it happened. I was forced to try it due to drought in the area, but it really worked out well. And then since then, I've always supplemented hay cubes so quickly and never gave it a second thought because it works. And then I'm just too lazy. Like when I go to horse shows, I don't want to clean stalls all day. I just like the fact that it was clean. Yeah. It was easy. There's a lot into that. Yeah. A lot into that question that's tough, but they did well on them.
Lisa's interested to see where it goes. As a horse owner, access to hay can be finicky. Super pleased to have an option no matter the cost. And sorry for the questions, but if there is a hay shortage as such in Ontario, does this company have access to another supply, whether Canadian or US? So is the cost of the cubes going to go up or is there going to be a shortage of cubes if there's a shortage of hay?
The benefit obviously you get with a big manufacturer is they're probably going to have better access to different contracts, right? We're going to have the ability to source out different options if there is a shortage, for your typical horse owner, right?
And that's the benefit to having a company that's run by people who have been in agriculture for generations,
exactly.
Right? They've been through it before and they know how to manage it.
Exactly.
Well, and as a contract grower, you're going to bust your butt to fulfill that contract.
Yes.
As when hay is your secondary crop.
Yeah.
There's lots around here. I know of a few hay fields that they've plowed under. Being that corn was so expensive last year, the hay is secondary, so that we've lost some hay around here. As when it's a contract grower, they need to fulfill that not to put it black or kind of cruel, but that is their contract. They need to fulfill it. They need to do it. You lose that contract, they lose a big part of their livelihood. So they're very ambitious to get that, whether that involves fertilizer, I'm sure there's lots that goes into it that I would never even guess as a grower, because Lord knows I couldn't grow anything.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I can't argue that.
Oh my gosh, plant killer. Yeah.
To all my uncles that worked at Pioneer, sorry I failed the family, and sorry to my grandpa that I failed as a farmer, but but they have to fulfill those contracts. That's their job. And when it's your secondary crop, you don't, not that they don't care, but they're not ambitious to do it. They're going to make sure that they have the product there.
Okay, these are good questions, and if you guys have further questions either for Jesse or myself or for Erin and you want to get in touch with any of us, you can go ahead and send us a Facebook message if you want a nutritional consult with Erin. Happy to pass along her information. Like I said, the cubes are going to be available on our shop. We have a bunch of skids over in the barn. We're feeding them to our own horses. And we're happy to answer questions and let you guys know how our barn makes out with everybody being on them, as well as the cost analysis, at the end of the 90 days.
Do we get to do anything intelligent and long and stressful that you want questions asked? Contact her.
Oh yeah.
And anything that's just
contact him. He knows it all.
Okay, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope you guys picked up some things, and thanks for being here with us as always. And we'll see you next week on Thursday at noon. Bye guys.
Have a good day.